Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar. My name is Heli Häyrynen and I'm the leader of Green Step Academy. I've worked in the field of education in many different roles. I've been as a trainer and I've led training and educational organizations. I've also been researching staff training for several years, and I'm still very excited about this topic. I'm very excited about this webinar too, because we have been working together with Kati in parallel and on a wide variety of projects, and it still feels like we have always too little time to discuss these important things. So now we have opportunity to discuss about all these things together and share the ideas with you also. So because you have asked for this webinar and these kind of topics, and so now we have opportunity to bring it on for you. So warmly welcome to the webinar, Kati. Could you tell a little bit about yourself to those listeners who have not met you yet, Kati?
Of course. Thank you, Heli. It's a pleasure to be with you, Heli, today here discussing about the really a hot topic, I would say. I'm sure in each company there, everybody is thinking about it at least. My name is Kati Tuovinen. Been working in Green Step for 4 years now, and my main role is to lead our HR services. I worked in different kind of companies and different kind of roles in my 20 years HR career. So there is a lot to talk about. A lot of change has happened, but as we will learn today, change is a journey, and it's like every day there is something happening. So you better be prepared what's coming rather than just go with the flow. But of course, sometimes that helps too. So I've been also training a lot, like Heli told that she's been doing that as well. And then, of course, supporting different kind of companies in building new ways of working, making a change in an organizational culture, or building values, or then, of course, in really practical HR matters, whether it's a legal thing or other operative things. So from strategic change management to really operative things. So I'm sure we're going to have a good wide range of different topics to cover today from this perspective, that are we going back to normal or not?
Thank you, Kati. I'm sure we will. And before we get started, a few words on how you, all the listeners, can get involved into this webinar. So today's agenda is full of very interesting themes around the topic, and we are very happy to answer your questions. So please feel free to ask questions in chat as we go along, and we will answer the questions at the end of the webinar. And please do not hesitate to contact us by email afterwards. And just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions and comment into the chat box in your control panel. And I think now we are ready to start. So the question is, how will you create functional arrangement for the workplace if and when the staff is returning to the offices during the autumn? Do you have everything planned to ensure the success of your business? So what do you think, Kati? What does the new normal mean for your business?
Well, it's not just what it means just for our business. I don't know what happens, but hopefully, can you see the presentation at the moment, Heli?
Yeah. It's perfectly well.
Okay,
yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it just changed my view, so I'm happy. So it does, of course, mean different things to different businesses. And for me, it means that we need to be prepared to help people to learn, again, new ways of working, because we cannot kind of expect that we are just like robots. Unfortunately for some people, but I would say luckily we are not a robot. So there is a human part of it. And it means that it's not easy if you've used to work remotely now for the past year or even a bit longer. It's not so easy to just jump kind of back to normal, meaning going back to work. So it does have an impact on how we feel about doing our work and how we actually do it with our co-workers. And if I just broaden this tiny little thing, is that if you think about this and look from different companies' views, there is actually, you could divide it into two if you like. So the first one is that others think that there is no kind of working place anymore. It's actually about the work people do, and it doesn't actually matter where you work as long as you do your work and enjoy about it. And the other perspective is more like, no, of course we need to come back to office together. We are social people. People are kind of social. We need to social interaction, and we need to see people to make sure that we get the best out of it. So there are two different ways of looking at it, and it depends on your business. So if I think about my business in that sense, it would mean, I would say, I believe in those both angles, and we need to engage people to find the best way forward together. And I'm positive that I think the people working in our company, for example, we want to find this hybrid mode. So working partly remotely and partly in offices. So seeing people, but then of course it's not only working in offices anymore.
Yeah. Before we get into the deep water, I would like to remind you or ask you maybe of the situation from the beginning. So because the changes do not happen overnight, so do you have any idea how long did it take for the organization, like approximately time, to get hop into the new situation and hop into the new way of working when the COVID situation started? Do you remember what kind of time companies have in that, or what kind of organizational changes they needed in that situation? Because I was just wondering, because we need to prepare to have that same time nearly to when we are getting back to the offices. So we shouldn't forget that changes do not happen overnight. So we need to time for these changes too, because but people think that it's very quick and you can just like go to the work and go to the offices, but you just don't remember that, okay, there are some changes you have to think over, and there are some changes you have to talk and have to learn and have to solve some problems maybe, and you have to spend some time there in the organization and all those people who work there to figure out what are the new rules and habits and way of we are working. But do you remember how much it took time there in the beginning?
Well, I think it's again depends on the company and depends on the situation, because some companies couldn't just work remotely, all of people, and then in some companies all went home and started to work from there. So I would say that people were, in many organizations, they were quite quick in the change that, okay, I will work from home now, but I would say the possible consequences and the feelings and what happens, it took months then. So kind of it took some time to actually understand what it means to continue working remotely. Because I think the first 3 months were like a shock year back for many people. And then because the summer was so good, people felt that, okay, now it's over now. But then it just continued and continued. So it kind of lasted the full year to make the adjustments and to adapt to the change. But then now to find a new realize that, okay, we have feelings and we actually can, in the end, only know what the final feelings and our ways of working then together are when we actually start working in a different mode, in a hybrid work, for example. But of course, like you said, it's never only overnight, but the more people are prepared to, more they know that, okay, now something new is happening and I'm prepared to take the learning and change journey, then it's easier But of course, there's always the feelings you cannot perhaps predict.
Right. Right. Okay. What do you think about those little bit more practical sides? Have you heard any news? Is there going to be any new requirements for the work environment, or have you get any signs of those?
Well, if I think about legal perspective as such, I wouldn't raise so many. So of course you need to, like when the corona came and changed our lives, we needed to think from the occupational health and safety perspective. There is a lot of different kind of legal things, but I think most of them are like common sense, that you actually think about how people feel well. And how we build a good culture, and we nurture the employee experience. But then, of course, like a really practical thing is to think that, okay, if most of the people prefer to work remotely, then do we need as big offices as we used to? Or if we wish to have people in the office at the same time sometimes, then we most likely need as big offices as we used to. So it depends on the company's ways of working, how they want to do the hybrid work, whether it's up to the employees whenever they want to come, whether they kind of book a seat, or whether they have the old way of doing it. Maybe they had own seats and tables there. So it depends. There are a lot of different ways. Some companies have said that if you want to have your own table and a seat at home, and the company is paying all the equipment, but then you won't have a permanent seat at the office. But then you can, of course, book a kind of a remote seat in the office, actually, not remotely at home.
Right. Do you have you figured out what are the, for example, top 3 things what companies should do or should decide before autumn time, before new normal start, if you want to call it that? Of course, there are many ways to call that, but have you recognized like 3 top things companies need to be done before autumn time?
Well,
like yes, from that practical side.
Depending on what kind of the perspective, but I would like to take as a number 1 to engage people. So ask what people actually want, unless your company is thinking that they are going to decide without employees' opinions heard. But otherwise, I really recommend, if you haven't yet engaged people, to ask how they feel, where would they want to work, whether they work like 3 days at home and then 2 days in the office or so forth. So engage people. Secondly, then based on this engagement and the answers, then actually have clear guidance that, okay, how is it back to normal? So no changes in the office. And then maybe there might be some changes in your remote work policy, if you have one, at least to have some guidance that, okay, if it's okay to just, do you need to inform somebody, how people know where you are, if they want to grab a cup of coffee with you, whether they send a Teams invite or a Zoom invite, or whether they can come walk next to you. So not just because of the rules say so, more like how we cooperate. So to know where your people are.
Yeah. And then, let's get. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Please continue.
And then I was going to say the third one would be the one that you are also been doing a lot. So it would be that help people to learn the new way of working, to learn the new technology you might have, what kind of communication tools you have, whether you use the same way you've now used for the past year, or is there going to be some change, and so forth. So help people with the training sessions, sharing sessions, and then of course, then people need to just do by practicing, but help them to understand the new guidance. Usually just written rules and sharing them aren't enough.
Yes, I definitely agree with you with all these communication and different kind of ways of that. I think gathering in the information, thoughts, feelings and insights through the working day is very, very important, and that makes sure everyone is heard. But I was just wondering, is there some legal points? For example, some companies might have different kind of areas and they have different kind of contracts in different kind of area. For example, if you live outside of the Helsinki area, you might have a different kind of contracts. So do you have this kind of situations going on? Do you see that's common?
Well, it's kind of a consequence from these top three, right? So depending on how the work is changing from the previous, it might have an effect on the employment agreements or some parts of them. So checking that the templates are there, or also elaborating whether we have some other possibilities, like the Working Hour Act changed last year, but I haven't seen a lot. And I've heard from my colleagues and then some also colleagues from the kind of legal firms that there hasn't been so many companies, so very little companies have actually utilized the new Working Hour Act as it was planned perhaps to be utilized. So there is this new way of flexible working time. In Finnish, it's joustotyöaika. So the kind of a flexible working time, which is a possibility that the employer is not anymore having the strong need to follow the working hour as such. The employee can choose when they work the 8 hours a day, whether it's during the night or day, or half of it in the morning and half in the evening. So there is some new ways of we could utilize better, depending, of course, in the industry and the work people are doing.
Right. Well, if I may say something about the practical side when training your staff into this new era, I think all these changes, even though they might seem a little bit like a small changes, and that kind of changes that you actually shouldn't do very much of, but I think all these changes require special attention to ensure that everyone feels safe in their workplace. And in the end of this webinar, I'm going to go back to this resilience conversation, but not right now. But I think that kind of feeling safe in their workplace, regardless of the task or its level, that's very important. And it is not possible to develop security simply by improving rules and processes and practices. And without proper implementation, changes will only cause that kind of like resistance. And resistance to change is often interpreted as people's bad behavior, what actually I think it is not. And however, I think the most common reasons for resistance to change are one thing is that change is misunderstood. If I think about this situation, maybe all these remote work rules are misunderstood, and all those new work environment are misunderstood. Some people might think that, okay, do they want to give us more limited space to make decisions? And the second is that the notion that the change makes no sense. That's very important. We want to understand the change. We want to know why we have to do that. So that's the second one. And the third one, I think you don't want to lose something that has value. So if you think about this kind of like new normal, people get used to that they don't have to travel to workplace, and they save some time. So if somebody says to them that, okay, you just have to go to the office, and you get the feeling that it's not worth it, you are just losing time. So you might get the feeling that you don't want to do that anymore. So you have to be careful when you are making these changes back to normal, if I might say so, that you will give some value. So you remember to say that, okay, it is important to see you here at the office because it is important to share ideas at the coffee table or something like that. So the people understand and they know and they see the value of that rule. And so in general, people are not opposite to the development of the company, but you have to see all these common reasons where the resistance might come from. And I think training is very, that is one way to develop this kind of like safety culture, because if you feel safe, your resilience is so much stronger than in that situation that you are a little bit insecure. But many training programs stumble upon the same problem. It's just like listening instructions, regulations, commanding, controlling. So as you said in the beginning, man is not a machine. So culture does not develop at the push of a button. So we have to remember that you can do the change. You cannot do the change so quickly. You have to give some time for that. And even though you think that nothing has changed, but if the people come back to the offices, something has obviously changed. And if we think about this all this year, and we have got many good signs that situations is passing by, so that is also one change, even though it's a good one, but it's a change. So we have to understand that it's affects to us. And if we think that the training has that problem, that it's not creating the safety culture, because it's so easy to just put the lists and do some regulations. But for training to be effective, any change must be justified and rationalized, so that the change is not misunderstood or stated to make no sense. So one great help in implementing change is to involve the person in the planning of change and education. So I know, we all know that, but do you actually do that? Do you actually plan all these change training and technical training and all these things together with your staff? And I assume that the thing is that you are not doing that in that way. And the greatest impact is obtained if the help of an external party, for example, is used as a trainer, a rationalization of change. I'm not selling myself, but I'm just saying that sometimes it's easier if somebody else says those things, why we are doing this way or that way, because then the people doesn't have that kind of like values or like a background with the person. They don't have history with the person, and the person is there just to help them. She or he is not going to stay there, so they know that that's not something which will stay or take their job positions, for example. So I think we promise to you, all the listeners, that kind of like practical tips. So here comes the first one. So could you please pass the next slide? Okay. So collaborative learning and leadership is one of the most effective tool for this. This is from the 1989, Johnson & Johnson. They made this big face picture, and you obviously realize why it's so good, because we remember that. But I think this is one practical tip for you, all listeners, to use collaborative learning and leadership. And this is when we're talking about the collaborative learning and leadership. These Johnson & Johnson have guided me several times to the secrets to collaborative learning or leadership with this drawing, because it's so easy to understand, and it's so easy to remember all those 5 key points to get people involved. And those are that positive interdependence, then individual accountability, then groups processing, social skills, and face-to-face interaction. So if you use these when you want to train some new skills or new rules or new any kind of regulation or instructions to your company, please remember those 5 tips, five that kind of like rules for or principles for collaborative learning and leadership. And if you do that, you cannot miss the thing that you take everyone into this process to plan and train in your own organization. So this is quite handy one. Okay, well, that was our first part, but what do you think, Kati? Could we move on?
Certainly. Of course, wanted to kind of comment on your thinking and sharing that I would say another practical tip to complement this picture, I would say, would be then to find your own ways of communicating, for example, how you enforce the message. So it's not just a one-time thing. It's kind of a continuous thing before it comes like business as usual. So it means that we need to also enforce it kind of in that sense that we have different communication ways. Is it a team meetings, or we have perhaps some written communications and different kind of face-to-face interaction sessions, and then also kind of ensuring that the individual accountability, for example, is there. So kind of also asking, again, engaging people.
Right. Yes.
Let's jump forward.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you can.
I can go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
For you. So what does back to normal or the new normal mean from the competence perspective? And then, of course, this is tightly linked to what Heli just shared with us from a kind of a bigger picture. But then, of course, if you think about competence management, competence development, or even talent management, which are from HR perspective, perhaps the umbrella terms, there is, of course, going to be a change in competencies we need to strengthen in the company. So with Corona, I'm sure there is a lot of things that we needed to learn. I'm sure that if people weren't so good at with chatting via Teams, for example, in some companies, I know some IT companies are really good with that, with Slack or wikis or whatever tools they use, but not everybody has been so or have been so good with some tools. So you needed to just learn by doing and learn from others. So sharing tips. But if I think about it from competence perspective, this is also have an influence on how we plan recruitment, how we plan resources, how we plan the organizational design, in that sense that how we ensure that our organization is working as well as possible in that sense. And of course, you need to involve people here as well. But from competence perspective, I think Corona helped HR in that sense that the competence perspective is more important than earlier. So many companies realized that, okay, we need to actually put more effort on how we build our competence model, or what are the really strategic competencies we want to learn more and strengthen in our company.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think that increased and established remote working means also that the skills must be developed in new ways. And with the crisis, the skills shortages of the personnel and the skills needs to be near future have also come to the fore. And I've heard that some companies have been able to transfer experts to other jobs or customer relationships, but some other companies have simply not found jobs for everyone because of the changes, and layoffs have been faced, and that's very sad, of course. But for some companies, the crisis have been so severe that the whole operation ended quickly. So there are so many different kind of levels and so many different kind of firms. But in a way, I just agree with this competence perspective, because it has so many different kind of use what you can look at. And sometimes it is been there has been a strategic stories behind behind the scenes, but in many points and in many cases, it's been very actually this corona crisis have proved to be very valuable skills related to remote management, organizing and participating in distance learning and IT skills and other things. And these affected all staff groups, because I think in some situation, the different kind of groups are in a different kind of situation than just manager level people get into the training and some other people outside. But I think these affected all staff groups. And in addition to these, the importance of leadership and supervisor work, as well as self-leadership, has been far further emphasized. So I think all of us have get to know and get some great tools for example, for self-leadership.
Yes, I totally agree, and good, really concrete examples of the competencies that have now been more important than earlier, perhaps. And that's straight to the point what I also meant, why I'm happy that this has also gotten more interest is that, of course, all the time companies and many people have said that the competencies are the key, the employees are the key, and the ways we work together and what competencies we have. But really often we unfortunately only talk about really kind of a common skills like language or then some IT skills, or then we talk about the expertise or the substance skills. Like in HR, it's HR, or in legal, it's legal, or finance, it's finance, or in sales, it's sales. But then we should talk more, and I'm thinking this shift and change that now coming to this hybrid work will help us to understand the competencies more broadly, and meaning that we also need to think about the different kind of competencies. I mean, based on our values and culture, or our communication skills, or like self-leadership, like Heli said, or other skills that we find in our company really important. And actually, if you think about also employer branding or the culture development or recruitment as such, we usually tend to say that we are looking for the right person, not necessarily with the greatest expertise. But then we lack actually the understanding of the competencies, or how we actually utilize them in the recruitment, how we ask the right questions to understand whether the person has a high learning agility, for example.
Yeah.
So this has a really great a push to understand the competencies more thoroughly.
Yeah. And I think one very interesting point is also that despite the fact that some companies have had to reduce the amount of money invested in education for a number of reasons, it is gratifying that the new and the different digital ways of developing skills have also been found. And these were considered to be more accessible regardless of physical location, and therefore were also considered to save cost and time. And I think if we think that, okay, it's 2021, but still there's a lot of firms and companies who doesn't use these different kind of web net hybrid ways of training, and they still think that it's not effective, or it's not worth all the cost or time, but they are getting there little by little. And I think many companies have also uploaded their own internal training and information sessions online, because they don't have that situation that, okay, they can do that every Tuesday morning with a cup of coffee, but they have to arrange something else. And also, if I think about that kind of companies who have different kind of places around Finland or around the world, maybe they actually have more committed and more communication and more actions between all these part of the companies. And I think that's also good, because then you can learn from each other and have that kind of like best practices. And I think that's also very good point if we are thinking about the competence perspective.
Yes, Definitely. And if you think about like learning from each other, then that's the kind of the same thing what when you asked about how long it will take to learn the new way of working.
Yeah.
It's the same with learning any skill, I would say, that you would need to just do it yourself, but then you learn the best when somebody has first helped you to understand the focus and our ways of working, and then you need to test it. So whether it's coaching with or sparring with a colleague or in a coffee discussion or whatever it is, then, but you would need to have a certain steps first. And this brings us to the second practical tip we have for you. This could be a really common for most of you. It's a learning pyramid, sharing the retention rates of the taught topic, and it's made by National Training Laboratories. They're Bethel and Maine. So these are the most influential learning happens usually in, as you can see, in teaching others or practicing by doing. And of course, this is not like made within the past few years. So some adjustment and some must have changed during the last year, but still I totally agree with this pyramid. So we need some, whether it's some of this from here, whether it's somebody telling briefly something, or you read from the guidance how we are going to work the hybrid work together, or you may have some videos about it, but then you would need to discuss with the discussion sessions or discuss with your colleagues, and then you actually practice it, and then you become a master, and then you start teaching others to do the new way of working. So in that sense, we thought this is a good tip to share, even though it's not a new tip, it's an old pyramid as such. Do you have some comments, Heli, to complement or ask anything from this?
Yeah, I just have to say that I love these kind of like little bit old tips, but we tend to forget these. We tend to move on and try something else. But in this situation, I think when you look at behind you and find something which work, so there's no point to change that. So I just definitely agree that this is working. Okay, maybe we can, maybe we can move on. I know that time flies. It always with that like that with you, Kati.
I know, with you too.
So how to lead the change? This is very interesting question. Kati, do you have you got some questions about our customers about this leadership skills or remote work leadership or things like that?
Well, mainly the questions so far have been regarding remote leadership or virtual leadership, what you want to call it. Not so much about what happens when we return to the new normal, which would be a really good question from the leadership perspective. Of course, the same kind of, like we learned today already, the same kind of things are there behind that we need to take into account. But I would say that not so many have asked yet about that, okay, how we do this when we start working in August or September in our new hybrid work mode. So I think it's one reason is that maybe the planning is still ongoing if it started, and then you actually need to practice it first before you realize that, okay, perhaps I need some help, or then to realize that, okay, this old way of doing is not working. But of course, the Finnish saying that the well planned is half made already. So meaning that it would be good to plan some. So I would say that we would be. I would love to see more about those questions, I would say, but perhaps the organizations are also confident about their now because they've taken this Corona jump and they've been able to lead the people remotely. So maybe there is also some confidence behind, and that's good, and hopefully that helps. And then, of course, if taking like tips here about leading the change or what's the good leadership about, of course, we come back to trust and culture and values and leading as an example. So those are not forgotten, and those are the most important things. So engaging people and showing role modeling yourself as the leader. But then, of course, you also need to ensure, like you probably have learned during the Corona year, a few things which are like clarity, so vision and objective, so kind of where we are going, and then clarity on the ways of working. So of course we need some written guidance, and then we need to bring them alive. So then every leader knows the common guidance, and then we can be as a role model. But if we haven't agreed them, of course, every leader is maybe doing a bit differently because we haven't agreed a common way of hybrid working together.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you, Kati. I've got some questions about how to train change resilience, and I thought that I would like to share a few ideas about that. So first we could start from what does resilience mean, because there are different kind of meanings in different kind of environment. It's totally different to talk about resilience when you are in a military context, and a civilian one has a little bit different kind of point of views, but they are not very far from each other. But I think it is all about what kind of person can cope with the change. And there's Dr. Linda Hoops, who has identified 7 traits that make a person adaptable. And the first one is positive to the world. So see possibilities and hope in challenging situations. That's very important, and that's a key issue. And the second one is, okay, positive to the world is not enough. You have to be positive for yourself. So engage your energy in approaching challenges. So that approaching challenges is not that kind of like bad thing. It's something good, something interesting, something motivating. And then the third one is focused. So direct your energy toward your most important goals. And if you think about the organization, if you think about the team, if you are the leader of a team, you just have to check all these. So you check that you are looking for your customers from a positive way. You are looking at yourself, your team in a positive way. And then you are focusing in your core working situations and the things what you are doing. And then you have to be flexible in thoughts. So you have to generate a wide range of possibilities and ideas. And that's you have to have this secure culture to do that. But you have to allow people to impress different kind of point of views and different kind of possibilities and ideas. Then you have to be flexible in a social way too. So what I mean is that you have to draw on other for resources and support. You have to be flexible, and then you have to be organized, apply organization or discipline to use energy efficiently. So that's a little bit the same as focused. And then you have to be proactive. So take action in the face of uncertainty and learn. So I think what you have to remember is that resilience is not something that people either have or don't have. It is process, and it's something we can learn and something we can develop, and it can be developed or learned by anyone. So there is no excuses that I'm not that kind of person. Yes, you are, and you can do the change and you can learn this. But it takes a time. But if I think that I would be a leader of some kind of team, I would take these traits and think of all our processes and all our guidance and all our way of working from that perspective, and say that aloud to your team, because then they understand that you want that they behave in that way. So I think that's the most important thing to learn nowadays.
Great, Heli. As I noticed that we are running out of time, I'm still going to share with you the final practical tip and link it to what Heli just said. So communication and consistency are consistency are fundamental in change. So there is 3 major areas like people, process, and technology. So meaning how we get these 3 parts to work together in hybrid work are the most important task as a leader when we go forward. And of course, the culture and communication plays a huge role there. But it's good to do the best you can to engage people and then to link it to daily work rather than and talk about it on a too high level. But that was in brief, this picture.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I think we need to finalize today as we have promised to keep it in 45 minutes. So thank you for everybody who are still online, and we are going to thank you all. And so thank you on my behalf.
Yes, and thank you on my behalf too. We appreciate you being here. We will be happy to continue this conversation with you afterwards in social media. So please do not hesitate to contact us if we could help you with the training or HR services, or if you just want to exchange some ideas. And thank you all once again for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this webinar, and have a lovely, lovely summertime. See you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.